On a quiet morning, a 17-year-old boy stepped out of his father's tent, unaware that his life was about to change forever. His name was Joseph, the beloved son of Jacob. Among all of Jacob's sons, Joseph held a special place in his father's heart. As a sign of his love, Jacob gave him a beautiful robe, unlike anything his brothers owned. Every time they saw Joseph wearing it, jealousy burned inside them. But the robe was only part of the problem. Joseph had begun having remarkable dreams. In one dream, bundles of grain in a field bowed down to his bundle. In another, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed before him. When he shared these dreams with his family, his brothers became even more resentful. They believed Joseph thought he would one day rule over them. What they did not know was that God was revealing a future that no one could yet understand. One day, Jacob asked Joseph to travel and check on his brothers, who were tending sheep far from home. Joseph obeyed without hesitation. As his brothers saw him approaching in the distance, they recognized the colorful robe long before they could see his face. "Here comes the dreamer," one of them said with bitterness. Their anger had grown for years, and now they decided they had had enough. At first, they planned to kill him, but Reuben, the oldest brother, persuaded them not to shed Joseph's blood. Instead, they stripped him of his robe and threw him into a deep, empty pit. Joseph cried out to them, begging for mercy, but they ignored his pleas. While Joseph remained trapped inside the pit, his brothers calmly sat down to eat. Soon, a caravan of Ishmaelite merchants passed by on its way to Egypt. Judah suggested they sell Joseph instead of killing him. For 20 pieces of silver, Joseph was sold as a slave. As the caravan disappeared into the distance, Joseph watched his home fade from sight, not knowing if he would ever see his family again. To hide their crime, the brothers dipped Joseph's robe in the blood of a goat and brought it to their father. Jacob immediately recognized the robe. Believing that a wild animal had killed his beloved son, he wept bitterly for many days. Meanwhile, Joseph arrived in Egypt and was sold to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh. Although Joseph was a slave in a foreign land, the Lord was with him. Everything Joseph did prospered, and Potiphar soon placed him in charge of his entire household. But Joseph's faithfulness was tested once again. Potiphar's wife tried repeatedly to tempt him into sin. Joseph refused, choosing to honor both God and his master. Humiliated by his rejection, she falsely accused Joseph of attacking her. Without a fair trial, Joseph was thrown into prison. Once again, everything seemed lost. Yet even inside the prison walls, God had not abandoned him. Joseph earned the trust of the prison keeper and was given responsibility over the other prisoners. One day, 2 servants of Pharaoh were imprisoned alongside him. Both men had troubling dreams. Through God's wisdom, Joseph correctly interpreted them. Everything happened exactly as Joseph had said. 2 years later, Pharaoh himself was disturbed by dreams that no one could explain. The chief cupbearer suddenly remembered Joseph. Joseph was brought before Pharaoh. He humbly declared that the interpretation belonged to God. Joseph explained that Egypt would experience 7 years of great abundance, followed by 7 years of severe famine. He advised Pharaoh to store grain during the years of plenty. Pharaoh recognized God's wisdom in Joseph. In a single day, Joseph went from being a prisoner to becoming the second most powerful man in all of Egypt. Only Pharaoh held greater authority. As the famine spread across many lands, People came from every direction to buy grain in Egypt. Among them were Joseph's own brothers. They stood before him and bowed to the ground. In that moment, Joseph remembered the dreams he had received as a young boy. His brothers did not recognize him. Years had passed. Joseph spoke the Egyptian language, wore the clothing of Egypt, and held the highest position in the kingdom after Pharaoh. Instead of revealing himself immediately, Joseph tested them. He wanted to know whether their hearts had changed. When he saw that they had become different men, especially Judah, who was now willing to sacrifice himself to protect their youngest brother Benjamin, Joseph could no longer control his emotions. He sent everyone else out of the room. Then he began to weep so loudly that the sound echoed through the palace. Looking at the frightened men before him, Joseph spoke words they never expected to hear. "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" His brothers stood speechless. Fear filled their hearts. They believed Joseph would surely take revenge. Instead, Joseph stepped toward them with tears in his eyes. "Do not be afraid. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Joseph embraced each of his brothers. Years of pain gave way to forgiveness. Soon afterward, Jacob and his entire family moved to Egypt, where Joseph welcomed them with joy. The son who had once been sold as a slave became the one who saved his family from starvation. Joseph's life reminds us that even when people betray us, God can transform suffering into purpose. What others planned for evil, God used for good. And that is why Joseph's story remains one of the greatest stories of hope ever told. The end.